What is going down, squad? We got the sourdough squad, the spicy squad meeting up for our Wednesday State of the Franchise episodes with the Jason Aponte. How we doing today,
I'm doing great. It's great to be back. But you know what really lifted me up yesterday? When we're watching the YouTube press conference with Kyle Shanahan speaking, and Brad's in there, and I jump in there, and the amount of spicy bread emojis, man, it lifted my heart, man. I shout out to everybody who enjoys the content, man. That was fire. I couldn't believe it, man. And it went on for a few minutes too. I was like, man, these guys are lighting it up. So yeah, appreciate y'all because that really lifted me up.
Hey, they were deep yesterday on the YouTube stream. So shout out to SDS, shout out to Spicy Squad. Drop your spicy sourdough emojis in the chat if you're vibing with your boys. Make sure you smash that like button and, of course, sub to both channels. But Jason, let's talk a little bit of football, baby. It felt fantastic yesterday. Mandatory minicamp comes around. Obviously, OTAs had a vibe, but the mandatory minicamp was just this immaculate vibe. You got Deebo Samuel back. Nick Bosa's out there working, helmets on. Ooh, boy, it felt good. What was your overall just feeling of having mandatory minicamp back?
It's funny how the cycle goes from, well, Deebo's never going to show up, and Deebo shows up, and basically everyone's there, and all of the good things that we've been hearing about Trey Lance, and we'll definitely get into that, and more than anything, the press conferences Trey Lance is running are just. Has he been doing this for years on the side? Like, is that what he was is that what he was doing when he wasn't playing? Was he just in a room practicing press conferences and giving off confident answers? Because he seems like the veteran. He doesn't seem like a guy who's going into his first full season of starting. It's an exciting time. And when you hear DeMeco Ryans today speak about Trey Lance and everything that we know what's going on, it's a very exciting time for 49ers football because we have guys coming back from injuries, no real significant injuries that we should be worried about as of right now, knock on wood, and everything seems to be moving along in a direction that seems kind of peaceful for once, Brad. Like things are on the level and we just will be talking about football only.
Oh, I can't wait. We're getting there. We're getting close. I think one of the best parts about OTAs and minicamp is we don't have to listen to the outside noise anymore. Oh, what we've been hearing. No. We don't need to know what you've been hearing. We can hear it from the players, from the coaches, directly from their mouths, the people actually in the building. So I think that's one of the best parts. And you talked about that. Like, we don't got to hear about arm fitness anymore. We don't got to hear about accuracy. We'll hear it from them.
All right,
and we'll take it much, much better.
You got me worried again because I saw the two throws that Grant posted of Trey Lance's throws, and I said, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to sleep at night because I don't know if our 22-year-old is going to be able to throw the football ever again because he threw the ball down the field twice. And what if his arm won't hold up, man? See, I just thought everything was going to be smooth. Now I'm going to be worried sick, no sleep the entire night because there is his arm fitness ready to go because I was told arm fitness is going to be a problem for a 22-year-old playing his first full season of football.
That's why I'm just so excited about this time, this period that we are in. We're getting to see it with our own eyes. We have boots on the ground with reporters. We're hearing it from the players' mouths themselves, coaches as well. Let's stick with Trey Lance since we're on that particular topic. I mean, we heard from DeMeco Ryans. Everyone that we've heard from the San Francisco 49ers, and, whether it's strategic or not, they're still going to give their opinion on the matter. Everything that we have heard, whether it's from defensive players, defensive coaches, offensive players, offensive coaches, there has been a consistent theme that Trey Lance is taking the step forward, whether it is confidence, whether it is ability on the field. I think the biggest thing that maybe we can point to objectively about Trey Lance is, hey, maybe last year he didn't get to showcase what kind of a leader he was because Jimmy Garoppolo was there, and we all knew the locker room gravitated towards Jimmy. But now I think they're seeing a different Trey. No Jimmy in the building gives Trey the actual opportunity to step up to the plate and be the leader. And by all accounts, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, for sure. And it goes past the press conferences and it just goes about the way that he's moving on the field in the short clips that we can see. Again, I'm not going to be able to tell you guys what actually is going on. I'm just going to be going off reports because as much as I get on other people for talking about what was going on at camp and things like that for not being there, I will not be one of those guys because I'm not there. Thank God that we have so many good people that are there that are actually doing good reporting, sending clips, and writing good reports. There were a lot more people there today. There was a talk of a deep ball to Ray McLeod on 11-on-11s, then another deep ball over the middle to Jordan Matthews that resulted in touchdowns. Look, it's 7-on-7s. If he's struggling in 7-on-7s or if he's killing 7-on-7s, I don't think either way would push you to either get excited or be scared, right? At the same time, you don't want to hear that he's not playing well. So this is all good things. All the good things are coming out right now, from anytime there was media availability. There was media availability last week, and I believe he went 16 for 18 or something like that. Today, he had a similarly sharp day. The day before, he had a very sharp day. He's stacking good days, and that's what you hear from Kyle Shanahan. You want to hear it from the coach. You want to hear it from the players, not from the people that are saying that they're hearing it from neither of those guys, and they're just pulling things out of air. So right now, everything is moving in the right direction for Trey Lance. It's an exciting time, and 49er fans have the right to be excited about all this, especially when Kyle Shanahan talks about him stacking good days, DeMeco Ryan talking about how hard it is to defend, and you hear things like Jimmy Ward saying, me and Trey talk trash back and forth. That means a lot in terms of them having fun with it, but Trey being up to the challenge because this is a very good defense that he's going to be going against every single day. He may be going against this defense and then a lesser defense on Sundays. So that is something that it will help him. Obviously, iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's really good to hear from DeMeco Ryans and the way that he's talking about it. What he said today at the podium, quote, Trey Lance has done an outstanding job. We're proud of where he is defensively. Defending him has been tough. Essentially goes on to say he's putting the ball on the money every time he throws it. The accuracy is there. The deep ball is there. He can zip it in there and make a lot of plays. DeMeco sounds excited for Trey Lance and sounds like I'm not hearing the arm fitness issues there. But I just feel like that's something we're going to have to bring up quite a bit throughout the season.
Oh, it's going to be a running joke.
I'm not going to let it go.
It's funny. It's going to be a running joke about a throwing thing with Trey. Haha. See that? See, you can do dual things. All right.
Very good. Very good. But to kind of wrap a bow on Trey Lance, I think the biggest thing is kind of what Kyle talked about. Taking steps forward. We're going to take that into training camp. Might not look beautiful every single day we get out there at training camp. Might not look polished every single day, but as long as a cumulative effort that he's taking steps every day in training camp to get better, that's what we're looking for. We're not expecting it to be perfect. We're not expecting him to be Steve Young right out the gates. We are expecting him to take the steps and incrementally into the year and throughout the year. He's going to make mistakes, and we're going to be there to work with him through those mistakes because guess what? That's what being a young quarterback is. You're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen, but he's going to have those wild plays too. So I think overall, we're pretty excited about Trey Lance. Any final thoughts on Trey Lance, what you've seen from OTAs?
Well, just from
this point,
just from what we saw, everything seems to be going good. But I wanted to talk about the Steve Young thing. I think that's really a good place to speak to, or a good person to speak to, obviously because of how good he was. But I think that Steve understands this sort of situation because he's been in it. Now, you can't correlate the person that was in front of him with the other person because they're not the same thing. But it is a starter who has somebody that's coming in over his shoulder that is a bit more athletic, and that's what they heard. So it's a good person to speak to. Steve Young's very level-headed. It was a very good thing for me to hear that he speaks to him a lot, and that Steve Young and that's why Steve Young has always kind of supported him. It's more because he knows what he is, and it goes back to like what Kyle Shanahan said about the Deebo situation. It's not about outside noise. It's not about social media. It's about words that I say out of my mouth going to him and back and forth. It's these people have relationships with Trey and they really know. So that was more encouraging than anything. So yeah, everything's moving in the right direction. It's an exciting time. And you just want to hear more and more good reports. Realistically, you just want Trey to continue to build and incrementally, like you said, I don't have a successful season stat line. I don't have a successful season win total under Trey Lance. A successful season will come down to if at the end of the season I feel, and many 49er fans feel, we've got our guy, and he
Yeah.
improved, and he's on his way to being that, because it will not look pretty all the time. And that's really how you should be judging it. We'll pound the table and say that over and over while keeping that in mind going into the season.
Perfectly said. And that's a great way to move on to the next topic that has dominated the 49ers offseason. Guess who showed up to mandatory minicamp? Deebo Samuel. What are your thoughts? Oh, baby. What are your thoughts on Deebo Samuel showing up? What do you think it means for his future with the team?
So if he didn't show up, I wouldn't say, oh my God, he's not coming back. But him showing up is actually more a good sign than anything. Sounds like his side and the 49ers got into a discussion about show up in good faith. I think we understand we're not going to practice or anything like that. But this is a sign of good faith that they're going to be moving in the right direction. From today, I believe there was a tweet, and I want to give proper credit. I can't remember. It was about no contention. I think Matt Barrows tweeted it. No contention at all with Deebo. Like, he's not running off by himself. He's with his teammates. Everything looks normal, things like that. So it's moving in the right direction. It's not a matter of if, it's more a matter of when now at this point. And again, if he didn't show up, I wouldn't say, oh my goodness, I wouldn't have hit the panic button and said, oh my goodness, he's not coming back. But him showing up definitely means more good than anything. So, I mean, again, it all goes back to kind of all of the hoopla, I guess, the circus, the roller coaster of, well, he scrubbed his Instagram, but there's only so many ways that this was going to go. And this always seemed like the likeliest scenario. And the 49ers never really, despite what other people think, and this is what Kyle Shanahan talked about, despite what other people think on the outside, the 49ers never were panicked. The 49er fan base was panicked because of certain things, but they were never really panicked. And it seems that this is all going to pan out in the correct way with Deebo getting paid, being on time for training camp. And also, I think that people underestimate that Deebo hasn't necessarily made a ton of NFL money. So $90,000, losing that in 3 days, that's not something that you're just willing to give away, even if you weren't intent on signing. So again, all of these things, good signs. And I think it's again, more a matter of when than it is if.
Right. So basically, would you say he ultimately gets a contract extension around training camp, maybe before training camp?
But the day before, I would say I would put the deadline as the day before that they put cleats on the ground at training camp. He cannot miss training camp. He cannot miss those reps with Trey Lance. He cannot miss with this new offensive line, a little bit of a change in offense in terms of what they're going to be dialing up. He cannot miss any of that stuff. Even if it is largely the same offense, it's not going to operate in the same fashion because of the personnel. So it would be very wrong for Deebo to not be there. One, because of money, but two, because he needs the reps. And the whole holding in thing, they need to get it done before that. So I'm going to set the deadline from the day before to the day before that cleats actually hit the ground in training camp.
We got a super chat from Corey Soto. Appreciate the super chat, Corey. He says it may be meaningless or trivial, but he had to show to save money, which is true. He had to save some money, and I think there were some other void things in the contract if he didn't show up. So he showed up, but still, Trent Williams talked about the maturity that Deebo Samuel had to show up underneath these circumstances, which I'll give him credit. Yeah, absolutely. I'm very happy he showed up. Corey goes on to say, but he doesn't have to wear the Niner gear while he's out there, right? Technically, no, he doesn't.
I mean, residency has our Niners gear, and everybody's wearing those. Man.
Residency stonks to the moon, baby. Speaking of residency, want to get your hat? You know what to do. Go to residency.com, use the promo code DSF9ers, and we got you. But ultimately, the situation with Deebo Samuel, I think it's a step in the right. We saw him. I think David Lombardi today at The Athletic posted a video of Deebo playing catch with Kyle Shanahan's son, Carter. And again, back to the tweet that you talked about with Matt Barrows, seems to be in good spirits, chirping defenders when Trey Lance is making plays downfield, things like that. It's a sign in the right direction. And I think if we take a step back, I would hope that Deebo doesn't have any problems with his teammates or the players or the coaches. It just feels like he wants to get paid a certain amount at a certain time. And that's kind of feels like where everything stemmed from, at least from the outside looking in.
Right. And Trent Williams said the same thing about him taking control of the situation and wanting to get paid now, but he did laud his maturity. So it's again, Trent said, I don't like to overstep, but if he calls me, we'll have a conversation. We've had conversations. There's a lot of guys in that room that have been in that situation before trying to get paid. Trent Williams was just there last year, even though he wasn't drafted by the 49ers. But he is around a bunch of good people. And again, there's only so many ways that this can go. So I would expect it again, not when, not if, more when.
Absolutely. There was another player that has been a lot more quiet. Obviously, Nick Bosa. He could be up for a contract extension. Obviously, the 49ers have a little bit more wiggle room. They picked up his fifth-year option, so he's under contract and team control for 2 more years. But I would imagine the 49ers want to get that taken care of, and or Nick Bosa wants to get that taken care of. What was it like seeing Nick Bosa out there and leading drills again, back in the Niner helmet, and doing Nick Bosa things?
That doesn't shock me a bit. And I don't know why. It's Nick is so soft spoken. It always seems about the game. He also has another year before this really is going to put him in the forefront, right? Like for Deebo, this is more pressing. With Nick, he has that 5th-year option. So there is a next year that will get this done. And I think that's what you got from the press conference. And when he said, hey, I'm not even talking to my agent about it. My agent is going to handle it. So it never really crossed my mind ever that Nick Bosa would miss or anything like that, or even talk about it in a different way or carry himself in any other way. I will say this. Maybe I'm tripping, and maybe the chat can tell me, or maybe Brad can tell me. He looks more lean and mean right now than he did last year. And I think he alluded to that in the press conference as well. Like, my goodness, what now? So he, again, bet on yourself, play another year. What Nick Bosa is doing, apparently he showed up in the best shape of his football career this year to minicamp. Huge year incoming, especially when you look at some of the other contracts, i.e. Aaron Donald and other guys that they've gotten. That's going to be the floor, especially if Nick Bosa does what we think he's going to do this year.
You're absolutely right. He looks lean, mean, money-making, sacking machine. He looks like he's going to come out and destroy opposing offensive lines. I think the biggest thing that he talked about that I think carries the most weight from today's press conference was going into this offseason, not rehabbing. It's a completely different vibe. Like he even said, I got to take time off. I got to go on vacation. I got to let my mind rest. I got to let my body recover and then know that I can attack it in a much different place of fitness opposed to when he was trying to rehab off a torn ACL and get right for training camp. So just from mental fatigue, physical fatigue, that translating in him to being more leaner, being able to put more time into the off-season workouts, and the type of things that he's doing, it feels like Nick Bosa is going to come in and just wreck shop this year. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Again, money talks, and all Bosa has ever done is produce. And the only thing that would slow him down was injuries. So if he's coming back and he's in the best shape of his life, kind of coincides with now you're going to the table, the contract table. Like, I did this and this and this in 2022. You thought that this was what I was coming in for after 2021. Now it's a little bit more. Price went up as the GOAT, one of the New York Ghost Fat Joe would say. But yeah, and that's what Nick Bosa is doing. He's betting on himself, and he's come back already. And I think the leadership role too. Maybe I'm looking too far into it, but him showing up to OTAs when he could take to minicamp, he could take the time off and just maybe stay on the side, and no one would blink an eye at it. But doing what Fred Warner did without a contract and things like that, and being a leader, sounds to me and feels to me like he is planning to be here for a very, very long time. And that is something that's really important. Unless he's just putting it out there that this is the type of teammate he's going to be, for me, I'm going to take the optimistic approach and say, this is exactly why he wants to be here, and this is exactly what he's showing.
Absolutely. And kind of sticking on the defensive line, Nick Bosa said about Drake Jackson, the rookie, selected at pick 61. He said, quote, he does things out there that I definitely couldn't do as a rookie, just the way he moves. He definitely has some impressive stuff about him. That's pretty, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, and also we heard from Samson Ebukam when he was asked about Drake Jackson. He was just like, damn, he's really good. I mean, 2 former guys, again, they're in his room. They're not going to knock him necessarily, but for Nick Bosa to try to compare himself to Drake Jackson and be like, he's moving and you see the bend, right? And the way Drake Jackson can move off the edge. Does that give you a little bit of a bump of optimism in regards to Drake Jackson and what he could be for the 49ers?
For sure, especially after we heard the first day that he was having a little bit of trouble shedding blocks and he was getting a little bit of stonewalled, and that's fine. Remember, when we did our breakdown of what he's going to bring to this team, he wins with finesse. The bend is one of the things that we looked at, but the power rushing moves he's going to have to develop, and that's a little bit of what this is here to work on. Now, again, when rookies get here, you have to view them through the proper lens. You can't view a rookie and a second-year player through the same lens, and I'll tell you why. With a rookie, you're looking to see them get their feet wet, be comfortable. Unless they're a top 10, top 5, can't-miss guy, you'd be a little concerned in the beginning. Second-round guy and a guy that we understand might take a little bit of time to develop that big bag that like Nick Bosa has. Nick Bosa can win many ways, inside, outside, power rush, finesse, whatever it is that you want to do. And that's fine. But to hear Ebukam and Nick Bosa get excited about that, that was sort of what we saw when we were evaluating Drake Jackson in terms of that bend, that ability to turn and get and not lose too much momentum while also getting towards the quarterback because you only have a certain amount of seconds to get to him. That's great to hear. We knew that. But the power rush, it's good to hear that off of the day before when we heard that the power rush moves weren't working as well and he was having a little bit of issues. This is the perfect time to work on it, and this is the perfect time for – see, when someone does something – bad, you don't overreact. When someone's doing something good, you don't overreact. Unless it's a player you know exactly what he is, right? If it's Trent, if it's Bosa, I don't need to hear any reports. I know what they are. But you shouldn't overreact or overreact to the positive and overreact to the negative, in my opinion. Guys are working through stuff. Guys are going to be working on things that they're not necessarily comfortable with. So it's easy to get swept up in the positive stuff, but then when somebody does something negative, it's just like, oh God, he's a bust. No. Like you gotta, we got to remember, you have to contextualize each player situation and what they need to work on. And then you'll get to a point where you'll figure out when it becomes concerning.
You got to go back to the scouting report, right? The scouting report would tell you he's got great explosiveness, great bend, the length, the natural traits, they are there. It's the little polish, the moves off the first move, the setting up the counters, those types of things. But we know with experience that will come. So, but overall, really excited to hear about Drake Jackson. We've got a couple super chats coming in, so let's get to these. Rod Simmons says, excellent content, guys. Aponte, I'm a Batman guy too. Win.
Rod, you're good anywhere. If we're in the same spot, you're good anywhere with me, bro.
Legend. Do you think Verrett looks refreshed, and can experience give him a third shot to be a legit starter?
For sure, I think. And then when you hear Kyle, we're all rooting for him. And when he signed back, when he could have taken a bag, when he signed back before the 2021 season, he talked about the culture and wanting to be here. And it was because the 49ers took a chance on him and they worked with him. So he definitely does. He'll have every opportunity to. I suspect they're going to make the right decision. If Jason Verrett is a starter and Charvarius Ward is a starter, there is a chance that Emmanuel Mosley, who I think is perfectly fine to play the slot, can cover any slot guy, in my opinion, is good in the run game as well, too, which is really important. And you need to know your zone, your zone moves and your zone packages from the slot. I think that is a hell of a trio, and the 49ers haven't had that many good corners starting in a very long time, probably since the 90s, I would say. And that would be the ace in the hole, and that's why the 49ers continue to take chances on Jason Verrett, especially when you consider that he costs absolutely zero against the cap. It's all reward, no risk, and if you do get that reward, then that ultimate flexibility is going to be insane, and you're marrying this pass rush to the best cover group that Shanahan and Lynch have had.
And to kind of piggyback onto some of the points that you made, I think that Verrett can absolutely bounce back. His issue has always been health. That's it. And we understand health isn't something that you can necessarily control. You work around it, build up muscle groups, build joint, whatever. You can do what you can do, but at a certain point, there's a bit of luck that comes into getting injured, getting nicked up, and things like that. With Jason Verrett, you take away the injury concerns. He's an all-pro, Pro Bowl talent cornerback and always has been since TCU. since he was with the Chargers, going back to 2020 when he was last healthy with the 49ers. So the biggest thing is, and we've kind of seen this before, because if you remember, we had Jason Verrett in 2019. He played 2 plays, and in those 2 plays, they weren't the best. Got torched. Was it by Deontay Johnson?
Deontay Johnson.
And then we never saw him again. And so we were like, oh, goodness, like the project didn't work. Well, they stuck through it. They gave him the time. And in 2020, just absolutely went crazy and turned in a Pro Bowl caliber year. Obviously gets injured in week 1 against Detroit. Devastating injury. But again, we've seen the model exist before. So as long as he can get right from a physical standpoint, I believe the talent is there. And if Jason Verrett shows up ready to go, again, you don't have to use him as a cornerback 1. You have Charvarius Ward. All the reports coming out of camp is Charvarius Ward is that guy. Emmanuel Mosley, we know what he's capable of when he's healthy. So Verrett has the ability to work at his own pace and come back when he's ready. And if he's ready, I would imagine he's going to be balling. But those are my thoughts.
And he's a Jason, so I'm going to always root for him. So,
bingo, bango, bongo. Shout out Cash the God.
Cash the God.
What a legend. Dropping a 20 on us. Appreciate you, my boy.
Guy.
Always showing love. Also, DJ, always showing love, making sure everyone's smashing that like button. You know what to do. Smash it. And let's get this thing going. Appreciate you, DJ. Appreciate all the spicy sourdoughs out there in the chat. I think I saw another one from Cap. He says, Wednesday wouldn't be right without the spicy sourdough state of the franchise. Gotta love it. Absolutely gotta love it. Continuing our conversation forward, what have your thoughts been on the developments with the offensive line?
Man, I overlooked Jake Brendel a lot. I mean, he's the starter.
Yeah.
And you don't want to overreact to OTAs, minicamp, but when you do a little research on Brendel, Chris Forrester, who's the offensive line coach, coached him up in Miami. And if you go back and you actually listen to them talk about Brendel last year and how him and Trey Lance took snaps together, now this isn't even tinfoil. It's 2 + 2 equals Brendel's the starter. And Trent Williams yesterday really made it lock in for me when he said, man, Brendel, you're watching him get off the ball and you're just shout out for joining the Spicy Squad, my guy. But you hear him talk about Brendel, how fast he gets off the line and him and all the praise that he's getting and Kyle, how much he loves him. It's his job. This is it right here. I don't think that there's a competition at center, guys. I really don't at this point.
I don't think so either. You know, I was pretty big on the Brunskill idea of kicking him down just because wanting that experience. But again, just hearing a little bit of insight from some of these players, coaches, it again changes kind of the perception in which you're viewing a certain situation. So when you kind of hear those things, you kind of change the way you've been thinking about it. And you're like, well, actually, you know what? That makes a lot of sense because guess what? Jake Brendel was in a camp battle last year with Dakota Shepley, someone that I really, really liked, who's actually up in Seattle right now on their active roster. And Brendel didn't give up any leeway in that particular battle, and he held on to the second starting string spot. And again, he got to take all those snaps with Trey Lance last year in training camp. So it just feels like a very natural kind of flow. They've kind of grown together. Obviously, Brendel has had been at multiple stops across the league, so he's a veteran. It's not like he's a rookie. It's not like, you know, he might not have a ton of starting reps under his belt in the grand scheme of things, but he has the experience and he's been in this system for long enough where Jake Brendel could absolutely be that guy. And, you know, I think David Lombardi was talking about it in the press conference and kind of shooting it back at the players. But actually, Javi even sent me a tweet. He sent me kind of comparing his scores and testing scores, and he tested really, really well. So from an athletic trait standpoint, it's there. We just got to see what it looks like with the starters. But so far, it sounds like Jake Brendel is going to be your center one this year.
And that's good because everyone's worried about the offensive line because of the rookie being back there. You would think a veteran would be able to navigate and cover up things that happen on the offensive line. If, let's say, protection breaks down, you have to know where things are coming from. I think we all expect Trey to, as smart as he is, still take his lumps in this league because things get exotic. You know, once you start putting things on tape, defensive coordinators change to you, things like that. There's going to be moments of that. But the 49ers don't seem worried about this center thing. I think they knew for a long time that Alex Mack wasn't going to be there. They hoped he would. And if he did, then Brendel's the backup. There was no way that he wasn't going to be on there. But they were fully fine, you know, rolling Brendel out this time. So we're going to find out when the bullets start flying in training camp or, you know, in the preseason. But I really do believe this is Brendel's job to lose at this point. And this is something that they've kind of hinted to us for a while if we were paying attention, which I wasn't.
Absolutely. And now you think about it through that lens. Okay, you're keeping Daniel Brunskill at right guard. This will be his second year fully engaged into right guard. So I actually anticipate Brunskill will get even better, more refined, more polished at that position. Then you understand Mike McGlinchey, by all accounts, all reports, he is on pace to return. So that's good news. And then you keep that continuity on that right side. I talk about it all the time. You go back and watch the tape last year before McGlinchey went down. Brunskill and McGlinchey were undefeated on passing off stunts. Anytime they threw a blitz, they overloaded the right side. They were lockstep and just were able to pass everything off. And that is continuity. That is working with that guy. One of the things that I noticed from the tape is after every single play, Brunskill and McGlinchey are talking to each other. Every play, just talking to each other about what just happened. And that, you can't take away that type of experience. Like, that's just not something that you walk in with. So we've seen other players try to step into that role, struggle a little bit. So it makes me a little bit more happy about the right side. But left side, there's also a big hole left by Laken Tomlinson. And by all accounts, by every account, that job belongs to Aaron Banks. What are your thoughts on what you've heard about Aaron Banks up until this point?
Well, it's good that he's going to slide into his natural position, which is obviously going to be a help. And 10 pounds lighter, I believe, Trent Williams talking about how he looks 10 times better than he did.
See the body is different.
Yeah.
He just looks thinner, but he's
great.
Still thick, boy.
That's great. And you heard Kyle Shanahan say that they were kind of getting ready to go with him at certain points, but things happened. Guys got healthy. So I don't think that Aaron Banks wasn't playing because a lack of confidence in him. I think that they were fine with what they were rolling with for a long time and it was working. So who could say anything? The more you listen to the people around this team speak, the more you start to think about this logically, Aaron Banks going to his natural spot. The less and less the all offensive line becomes a worry, even if it is still the biggest worry, in my opinion, because nothing can happen without an offensive line play. Shout out Brad Graham. But at the same time, you are seeing stalwarts like guys leave. Laken Tomlinson, how effective will McGlinchey be? Who's going to be the center? When you start to put the pieces together, and now with the breadcrumbs the 49ers have left us and them talking about guys that they like, this becomes less of a concern, or your panic goes down a little bit more because you know that there are going to be times where protection will break down, and Trey Lance is going to be able to avoid that with his legs as well too. So I think there's going to be a little bit of maturity on both sides, especially because this offensive line is going to have to learn how to block for a not quote unquote pocket passer. You know, Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't looking to move out of the pocket or anything like that. Usually the ball's out 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds, it's right out. This time, you're going to have to learn to not hold because he may be making a play back there. And I think that's what all these valuable reps are going to be for this offensive line in the minicamp and training camp are going to be about.
100%. And when you look at it from a scheme standpoint, when Jimmy Garoppolo was in, it was 11 versus 10. They were not accounting for the quarterback. They, like you said, they're not worried about Jimmy even really escaping the pocket. Jimmy would stay in that pocket for the most part. And so with Trey Lance entering the mix, you can actually aid an offensive line by gaming up that 11, true 11 on 11, where DNs, linebackers, or safeties have to account for the quarterback, whether it's the zone read action, just showing the mesh, the mesh point in the zone read. Just that alone is going to freeze defensive ends. And that allows you can bring guys across formation. You can pull them across. You can do all different types of things that can actually lighten the load a little bit on your offensive line. And like you alluded to, if they bring the blitz, well, we got a quarterback that can just skirt out the way. So overall, I'm pretty excited about the developments. I like the confidence coming out of the building about Jake Brendel. Again, I think the confidence is permeated to the rest of the fan base because we just didn't know at this point. So I think the offensive line is falling into place. I think Aaron Banks is taking those steps forward and is going to be a nice development in regards to that situation. What did you think of Trent Williams' comments on Jason Poe, another Jason?
Yeah, I mean, Trent strikes me as a guy, and I know there was a lot of discussion for some reason in the offseason that Trent wasn't a leader, or maybe Trent didn't really care about that. I don't know that that's true. I mean, you're listening to him talk about an undrafted free agent, talking about how athletic they are. He spoke glowingly of the entire offensive line, saying that they're all athletes in their own way. And yeah, that's encouraging.
Jason Poe, you can't not be an athlete to play on this offense
in this scheme, exactly. And that's why when people complain, well, the guards and the centers are smaller. Yeah, you need them to be a little bit faster. Off the on pull techniques, all those things.
Got to get to second level.
Right. But yeah, for me, this is all good news to hear from Trent Williams. I mean, if he's talking about the undrafted free agent, it's clear that he's talking about a guy that he believes is going to stick around. I think is probably going to stick around one way or another. You just got to be worried about keeping him on the practice squad and having someone scoop him up, which would be my concern. You can't keep everybody. The 49ers are going to lose some good football players, and not because they're not good at football. It's because there's a numbers crunch, and other people are going to pick up on that, especially the Seattle Seahawks. If any of these guys find out that any of these guys are actually any good, well, I don't think they have to even find out that they're any good. I think they just have to find out they play for the 49ers. Once they find, wait, the 49ers brought him in? Maybe we should sign that guy. Yeah, that's their scouting department. Hey, did that guy play for the 49ers? Nah, get him out of here. Bring the next guy in. Did you play for the Niners?
Go get that guy. No.
Sign him in. But yeah, I think it's great. And I think that, again, when you talk about athletes, when you talk about this offensive line, Trent Williams seems to be excited about all these guys. And these are, again, when you go through the positional breakdowns, when you go through what these guys do well, they all were athletes. That's what everybody was excited about with Poe. That's why everybody wanted Donovan West in the third round, because these are things that everybody kind of knew. But it's good to hear that Trent Williams is saying all these things, and he seems excited as well too. I will say the one thing that Trent really, really, really said, that it takes a big man to say, and hindsight's 2020, and the competitor in him, but about the NFC Championship game. I mean, him saying, obviously looking back, I probably shouldn't have played. Colton McKivitz would have been better on 2 ankles as opposed to 1. And I remember saying before that game, no, Trent Williams on 1 is better than anybody on 2.
Yeah, right.
But it was really big of him to say that. But I knew the competitor in him wasn't going to let that go. So I mean, it was just kind of jarring to hear that discussion when he talked about the end of the year. Seems like it was something that was heavy on his heart.
Definitely, and I picked that up too, and I was like, that is a very humble thing to say. Like, again, he wanted to be out there with his guys. He felt like if he's not out there, he's letting his team down. Of course, we understand. I don't think Trent had been in a playoff game until this year. I think he didn't play at all.
Remember, he punched Richard Sherman in Washington.
All right. So he hadn't been far into the playoffs. So I felt that was an admirable thing to say, but it was funny because I've watched that game multiple times. On one ankle, Trent Williams was still the best offensive lineman out there, like he was. I do appreciate that from Big Trent. And to your point, he is a leader, man. He is going to be a leader of that room, that team, that group. They go as Trent goes. The Silverback is one of a kind. So just thankful that he's on the San Francisco 49ers, and he's just going to be that guy until he calls it quits. Jesse, tell wifey she's a real one, because I agree.
Wait a minute, there's not? There's not?
There's not?
It should be you. It should be you and Sam that are running it. You and Dad. Like, it's just you two, like, just out there, and it's a little section. I mean,
everyone in the section just has like the bread emoji,
big loaf of bread emoji. Yeah, like, look, I know you're watching Jed. I know you're watching John. I know you're watching Kyle. you need to make this happen. Okay. I understand that, you think you've got some big stuff going on with like, oh, the season's coming up and you got to get these extensions done. No, let's push this to the
No,
forefront
this
and
is number one.
let's figure out how we get this done. Deebo's in camp. He'll probably sign. Nick Bosa's not worried. You're good. You're good. Just take care of the other elephant in the room and then do this, and we'll be all set, ready to go for training camp.
That would be absolutely legendary. That would be freaking hilarious. Hopefully it happens. We'll see. Jed, don't hesitate to call me.
Jed,
the line's open.
Holla at me, man.
And then we're of course then gonna have to incorporate the spicy pepper emoji, and we'll just have spicy sourdough emojis.
It should be for only in games, or only for fans who don't live in Cali can only have the spicy one, because I was told that I can't cover the team from New York, and I can't.
Oh, shots fired.
Oh,
shots fired.
Sorry.
No, tell him. Sorry. Tell him, Jason.
Sorry. I was told that I can't cover the team from Jersey. I can't be a fan. And it was really from a guy who like lived as close to Santa Clara as I did. He just happened to live in California. Like Sacramento might as well be New Jersey, bro. That's nowhere near Santa Clara. What on earth is that guy talking about, man?
Oh my goodness. Don't let anyone tell you how to fan, man. Don't ever let anyone tell you how to fan. But I wanted to talk about a guy that I think is a ascending asset. And I want to see what your thoughts are. Obviously, a lot of the offseason talk, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Aiyuk with Trey Lance, and their connection that they're building. But what are your thoughts on Juwan Jennings and what you've been hearing about Juwan and what we keep seeing about Juwan? And feels like he's taken that next step.
Yeah, it's funny. The best offseason he's ever had. They said he seems to be open all the time. The separation he's creating. Unfortunately, Danny Gray's going to miss 2 weeks, it sounds like. So Juwan Jennings has a chance to really, really separate himself in terms of you're not going to be able to get this guy off the field unless it's a situational thing. It's really good to hear. It's 6th-round pick, right? Usually 6th-round picks either they hit or they're just like they never make the roster. So the first year he doesn't play. Okay. This past year, basically Kendrick Bourne just much bigger, and that was his role. Third down, first downs, red zone. Now you're starting to hear the development, and I think this goes back to something that you and I have always said. It doesn't matter really about what round, but everybody develops differently. Some guys, they get into the league and they just start destroying everything, and that's not typical. Some guys, it takes them a year. Some guys, the light bulb goes off in 2 years. Well, it seems like the light bulb's going off now for Juwan Jennings. He seemed to be a guy that Jimmy Garoppolo looked to on third down. This is encouraging because in a year where there is going to have to be a little bit of more help for the rookie, it's nice to hear that there's another security blanket and a guy who can get himself open, especially when Trey gets on the run and the play breaks down. So, yeah, all these things about Juwan Jennings coming out are it's just amazing to hear.
Absolutely. Shout out Daryl. You're the real one, my guy.
The realist.
You're the realist. But I do appreciate what Charvarius Ward said about Juwan Jennings. And again, by all accounts, what we've heard about Charvarius is he seems like he's going to be a guy. So what he was saying about Juwan Jennings was he just knows how to get open. And I talked about it the other day, but like he's a football player. And when I hear a football player call another football player a football player, that's a high compliment, because not all football players, surprisingly or not, are those dogs.
Or football players. He got that dog in him.
Football players that got that dog in them. So the thing that we've heard about Juwan ever since he showed up is he got that dog in him. And not only does he got that dog in him, he knows how to create separation. I think Charvarius even used a term similar to like slippery or something like that. He just knows how to use his body type to get open. Again, he's not a burner. He's not going to burn past you, but he knows how to manipulate with his route concepts. And he knows how to break it off at certain times. Probably knows how to make his routes mirror other routes so he can set up defenders in certain ways. And then he pretty much catches everything that you throw at him. So, and not the thing that goes, unnoticed sometimes, maybe more so in the past than now, but he blocks any chance he gets. So I just feel like Juwan Jennings is going to be another guy, another football player To add to the list, Deebo Samuel, football player. Trent Williams, football player.
Surprisingly, not all football players are football players is what I learned today. But you know what it is too, and I think that a lot of people sometimes forget that there are nuances to route running. Not everybody has to run the crisp route. Not everybody has to have all that speed. Being able to get yourself open is about your body control, knowing leverage, knowing what cornerbacks are trying to do, doing the little things at the end, and knowing when you have to break off of your route to get yourself open. Those are the things that Jerry Rice wasn't the fastest. Jerry Rice wasn't the strongest. He knew how to get open, and he was going to win every single time. There's plenty of instances where you see guys, and you're like, man, that guy runs a 4.54. How is he? It's not all about that. There are so many ways to win in this league, and Juwan Jennings seems to just sharpen his tool bag and put more in there, and he's getting better and better. That's the development you want to see. Not everybody hits the ground running. Not everybody's Justin Jefferson. Not everybody just joins the league and just destroys everything. But for him, this is all encouraging to hear because Trey Lance is going to need these security blankets and these type of guys when the play breaks down to get open.
Absolutely. And we know Deebo Samuel, like he's going to ball out. Probably, would you assume that less wide back this year?
Yes.
More just natural receiver?
Yes, absolutely. It's the Ty Davis Price pick was all you needed to know. Another third-round running back. You've already got running backs on here. Wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers make a move and sign another running back. There's a few other running backs that are still out there that are very capable. Jeff Wilson Jr. is still here. I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Hasty doesn't make this roster somehow, and they bring in somebody else. So yeah, I mean for sure they're definitely going to lighten his load. Doesn't mean that they're going away from it because it is a big play waiting to happen with Deebo Samuel. Like if Kyle sees his spot, he knows when to use it, but it's definitely not going to be to the tune of the 10, 12 carries that you saw down the stretch and in the postseason. But if it is a big play, you might still see Deebo in a third down moment like the Green Bay Packers game in the divisional where you need to get that first, put the ball in your best player's hand and that situation. But I wouldn't suspect that it would be the amount of carries that we saw down the stretch, which was a little out of necessity based on big plays lost out of the backfield without Raheem Mostert.
Absolutely. And so with that kind of thought process in mind, understanding, kind of circling back and staying in the wide receiver room, do you think Brandon Aiyuk is going to take a step forward this year? Because I was actually we were doing a little bit of like a stat prediction on Brandon Aiyuk way too early. I was talking about how last year I predicted him to get like 1,400 overall yards. Definitely didn't hit there. But do you see him maybe surpassing that 1,000-yard mark this season, maybe taking that step forward with the connection he has with Trey Lance? Again, they've been working out together for 2 off seasons now. We know Brandon Aiyuk knows how to run those deep routes really well, and now have a quarterback who seemingly, again, we had 2 times today in practice where Trey Lance threw, I think Hutchinson reported from KMBR, over 45 air yards, which, hey, that's a nice
air yards.
Air yards.
It's not like we made a big deal about that.
Right? So do you think, again, based on that situation, because you watch the tape all the time too, you go back and you look, Aiyuk was open a lot and open a lot deep.
Yes.
Do you see a situation where he takes that step forward, made it through the doghouse, and, his relationship with Trey could actually evolve his statistics and impact the team?
See, it's hard for me to predict 1,000 yards when I don't know the passing volume of this team. And if I was guessing, it's either going to stay the same or even a little bit less when you consider that the quarterback can actually run. So now we're talking about taking passing attempts down. But there is a world where the target share goes up because of the relationship that Trey Lance has with Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk works out with Trey Lance, and it's been 2 straight years. There was near misses in terms of that Houston game where he puts that ball in the end zone and the defender held Brandon Ayuk's arm, where Brandon Aiyuk probably brings that in and scores. It's about the way that this offense is going to change in terms of how they design these shots, and Trey's not afraid to take those shots if he can see them. So that's really it. It's less about crapping on Jimmy Garoppolo for missing him and more about Jimmy knowing, okay, my first option's here. I like what I see here. Bang, I'm going to go for it. Now, you can complain and say, I wish he looked down the line. Sure. But if he is taking what he thinks he sees. I really can't complain, especially if it's a completion. Now, the Dallas game, he's running wide open after he put what's the young man's name? Trevon Diggs on skates, and he's wide open and the ball's over. But the thing is those type of misses could have iced that game, right? Like if Brandon Aiyuk brings that in and he puts them in field goal range or takes that to the house, that changes the complexity of that game. So for me, there is a world where Brandon Aiyuk does this 1,000-yard thing, but you have to start to put into account they're going to run the ball more because of Trey Lance and because Trey can run the ball. So how many passing attempts? What's the target share? Does Lance and Kittle develop later on in the year? It's hard to tell right now. It's fun to talk about, though, for sure. But I would, if let's say this. Here's my hot take right now. June 8th, everybody's starting to get into the fantasy football thing. Deebo's being drafted as like the wide receiver, like 7. That's a little too rich for my blood because you're gonna be drafting him at his ceiling. I don't suspect that he's gonna go above that, right? But Brandon Aiyuk is being drafted as like the wide receiver 38 to 41, and that's a steal. That can end up being the guy. Yeah, value. So when I'm looking at it that way, I expect Brandon Aiyuk to take a bump. I expect Deebo Samuel to take a bump down because they're not going to be running the ball as much with him. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Hate to bring fantasy football into it. It's just when you start breaking down targets, how many targets are going to be there, how many times they're going to pass the ball, maybe what situations are going to be like in games. You don't have to throw the ball. You're just killing them with the run. It's realistically a chance where Brandon Aiyuk actually leads the team in receiving while Deebo Samuel leads them in total yards. So there's a way that you can spin that.
I like that. I think that we could honestly look at that objectively and be like, that could be a range of outcome that has a lot of truth to it. So, but we're going to see. And speaking of running the football, can't forget about the running backs. TDP. I mean, we understand it's OTAs. There's no pads. It's really hard to objectively at least scout like how they're going to translate when they're not getting tackled, breaking tackles, how they're handling contact. But what is your overall thought process on the running back room right now as it stands?
We got to figure it out. I think we all know that this is Elijah Mitchell's job. And at least in the beginning on early downs, who's going to be the third down guy? Who's going to be the guy that gets, who misses out on the roster? I still think it's Jermichael Hasty. I don't think it's Jeff Wilson because MLB baseball players are slapping each other over Jeff Wilson in fantasy football. He's got to stick around just for that alone. But we've got to figure out where this offense is, what they feel comfortable with. I think training camp is going to be much more of an indicator. Although, having said that, last year at training camp, who was the guy taking the first reps with the team?
Mr. Sermon.
Trey Sermon was, guys. And how quickly that went away. And Raheem Mostert was there, ready to go. So team one, it was Jimmy Garoppolo. Trey Sermon was out there. So in a way, we have to wait for camp. In a way, things are going to change, and you know how much Shanahan likes the hot hand. But I think that Elijah Mitchell is firmly in the driver's seat for the first and second down role. But in terms of who else is going to mix in, that's the stuff that we've got to figure out.
Absolutely. And I don't take this as any slander at all. This actually made me chuckle a little bit. He said TDP should be called TBD, as in to be determined.
That's just fair.
We don't know. We don't know yet.
That's fair.
Because, I was quick to anoint, Trey Sermon because, again, like you said, we were at training camp and that was when Mostert was healthy and we're going out there to team period. And the number one guy who steps out onto the field for the first rep of the day is Trey Sermon. I'm like, oh. And I was like, I'm a Mostert truther. So I was like, oh.
It was Elijah Mitchell with the second and third team that was busting these long runs off. And we were like, hey, man, who's that? Right. So it's funny how things work out. That's what's the beauty of training camp is battles start in one spot and then they end up in a completely different spot for various reasons.
Absolutely. But ultimately, excited to see TDP, a little bit of TBD at this point, but again, nonetheless, still excited. You're going to get a healthy, what's his name? Jeff Wilson. And then also Elijah Mitchell, going to be the workhorse, at least for the most part, at least mixed in. We've heard good things about Jordan Mason. Do you think Trey Sermon is a lock to make this roster this year?
I do. It would be unfortunate to know that a 3rd-round pick is off this team for something that isn't an injury. Now, if a guy's injured and there's nothing you can do, but a 3rd-round pick is very valuable. So the 49ers are going to give him another shot to see what he can do. I think that he's kind of playing for his football reputation this year. So I would expect that he's much more motivated in that way. But I would be fairly disappointed if a 3rd-round pick was off of this roster in the 2nd year. That feels like a poor pick. And I mean, you can look at it two ways. You can look at it and be disappointed like I would, or you can look at it and say, well, the 49ers realized their mistake, didn't mess around with it anymore, and they just moved on. But I would take it more as disappointing because those 3rd-round picks are very valuable. As you know, I don't know, Brad, did you know this? The 49ers could have had Terry McLaurin in the 3rd round. Did you know that?
I did know that. Who did they take instead?
They took Joe Who's-Its.
Joe.
What's his name, man?
Jalen. It is.
Stop. I don't want to say his name because he didn't pick himself. But it's just like, man, 2019, we could have had Deebo. We could have had Bosa and Terry. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, my goodness. And I know for a fact, if Jason and I were driving the draft ship, Terry McLaurin would be on the 49ers.
Terry would be here.
He was a my guy for both of us, and we didn't even know each other at that point.
Let it go.
We can't.
I will never let it go, ever.
No, he will not. Same with Javonte Williams. I'm sorry, I had to.
Hey, why did you? All right, see, man, you know what? End the stream. The stream's over, guys.
And it is a perfect time to end the stream. But we do appreciate you guys joining us as always. State of the Franchise is always a fun episode where Jason and I just get to talk about all things 49ers, where we think they're at, where they need to go, and all the things that come along with it. Jason, tell the good people where to get more of your content, where to follow you, and all that good stuff.
Man, shout out to you guys. Yesterday was a surreal moment. Like I said, we're watching the YouTube, press conference with the rest of you guys. We want to do our reporting and everything, and you guys are dropping those spicy bread emojis, man. Shout out to you guys. I'm so glad that you guys love this show. I love doing this show with Brad. We're back in the saddle right now, so Wednesday we'll be back next week, but the content is going to keep going now. I took my little time off. I'm still going to be unpacking. I feel like Brad was right when he said that I'm going to be unpacking for about a month and a half. I still feel like there's no end in sight for unpacking, and it's going to be a while, but we've got to be able to deliver you guys the content, especially during this crucial time right now with Minicamp. So subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, hit the sub button, and join the Spicy Squad. You can actually click the description, and the link is in there if you're watching on my channel. And follow me on Twitter at JasonAponte2103.
Absolutely. Make sure you get all that done. We will be back maybe next Wednesday. We'll see how everything goes because I just got my situation set up and I was here for about a month and a half. So I understand what you're going through, Jason.
I like that mic too, man. Well, you need to hook me up with a link so I can, because I'm upgrading everything. I'm upgrading everything.
I'll give you all the links to the setup because I'm not gonna lie, I love this freaking thing.
It's really good.
It's dope. But again, appreciate everyone for tapping in with us. Again, sub to both channels if you haven't already. Smash that like button, hit the noti bell. That way you don't miss any time that we go live, especially for the State of the Franchise episodes. But for now, that is it. And we will continue to come to you guys with news as the season progresses and we get closer to training camp. So again, thank you all to your guys' support. Everyone who sent us super chats, subbing to both our groups. We really do appreciate it. SDS is undefeated. The Spicy Squad staying spicy. Appreciate you all, but we're out of here. Peace. Oh,